Are you a real estate investor looking to sharpen your skills or a newbie looking to become one? You're in the right place. Welcome to Where Should I Invest? Real Estate Investing in Canada with your host, Sarah Larby.
Jacqueline, welcome to the show. How are you? Good.
Pleasure to meet you finally.
Yeah, we've been talking on Instagram a little bit. I've been watching your construction, your renos that you're doing. I want to talk all about that today. So I'm happy to have you on. So give us a little bit of background on how you got started in real estate investing and also what your strategy is.
I owned properties in my 20s, but not with the mindset of investing, because I honestly didn't even know that concept existed back in my 20s. When I was in university, I had purchased my third year a home down by Dalhousie University, which is in Halifax, and just rented the room. There was nothing special. It was a fixer-upper for sure. But I got 4 or 5 girls at any given time. They were living in the house with me. This paid for everything. I finished. I came to Ontario. I sold the property. And then fast forward 28, I bought my own personal home. And it just kind of took off from there. I was in a long-term relationship that did not work out. We didn't live together, but he lived down the road. And so we were together for 13 years and I just wanted to move away. I didn't want to live down the road from him anymore. So the house did not sell and I was frustrated. So I was like, well, fuck this. So I found my first realtor, who I've been dealing with now for the past 20 years, Steve Kanjar. He's in Fonthill. And I just said, I want to move. I'm tired. This house isn't selling. I don't know what to do. So I said, I'm going to rent this out and buy another property. So he's like, oh, okay. So, and that's how that started. So then I bought the next house and I was like a year into that. I'm like, well, you know what? I think I'm going to rent this one out and buy another one. And so then I bought a duplex and it just kept rolling. And then the light bulb was going on. I'm like, I think I'm onto something here. I've got myself into something. So I actually started on this path unknowingly, and then it just and in the past 5 or 6 years, I've been flipping and really enjoying that. It gives me, because I was a dental hygienist before, did not want to return to that, and I just loved flipping. And then, I have my rentals and.
So basically,
yes.
It sounds like you are living in some of the rentals or the flips that you're doing them and then renting them out and moving on to the next one. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Like when I first started getting into the rentals, flipping was not on my horizon. It wasn't even a thought in my head. So I would buy a property, clean it up a little bit, do a lot of elbow grease, and then rent it out and move on to the next one. But cleaning it up and doing some minor renovations with the rentals, the light bulb started going off and I kind of snowballed and I thought, well, I'm going to start flipping maybe. And so my first flip, it was definitely not on the scale of renovations as what I'm doing now. If I had bought my first flip and it was the flip that I'm currently working on, I think I would have packed in my tool belt and I would have run for the hills and I would have just said, okay, I'm just going to go back to buying rentals and do it that way. So it's, I don't know if that.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So, I guess the reason I was asking that, because in Canada, if you live somewhere and you sell your primary residence and you've lived in it for more than a year, you're technically, and I'm not an accountant guy, so like check with your accountant, but you're technically exempt. But what I'm thinking is probably pretty cool is if you're living in it, you're renovating it, and then you've lifted up the value while you were living there. As an example, if it's been more than 12 months,
well, my flips are not considered my primary residence because I have a commercial insurance policies on everything. And so because of that, the insurance companies know that I'm buying this to flip it. It's not my, you know what I mean? And so the policy is very expensive for that, but it also covers me if anything happens. And they know that there's going to be different people working on it, like a general contractor or an electrician. And I have to provide verification that the people working on the house that I'm flipping are bondable, they're insured, and all of those great things. But yeah, no, the house that if I'm living in the flip, the insurance company doesn't consider. Everything is upfront. They know that I'm buying this to live in it temporarily. I'm buying it to fix up. And so it's all done, that way.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So what is your portfolio? Are you able to share what that consists of? Like how many flips you've done, how many buy and holds you've got roughly?
I have 6 single family homes in the Niagara area. So from St. Catharines to Welland, Fonthill. So those are where my single family homes are. I have 1 duplex. Well, it's technically not a duplex. There was a big debate with the insurance companies about this because technically it's not a traditional duplex. So there was some arguments there going back and forth, but we finally settled on a description of the building because it technically has 2 rental units, but it's a mother-in-law suite. So I have that, and then I have my flips. So flip-wise, I've probably done 8 or 9. This is probably my 9th one, the current one, the Wellington project.
Awesome. So, I'm very personally hands-off with renovations, whether I'm the contractor or hire the contractor. I'm not the one that's actually doing it, but your Instagram videos are pretty cool because you're getting in there, you're getting dirty, you're actually doing the renos. And so for somebody like me or somebody that may not know where to start, can you just walk us through maybe you're looking at a house, it sounds like you've got a lot of singles at this point in time. Like what are some things, if it's just an old and dated house, that we could maybe start thinking about doing and how you got started and actually physically doing the work?
So if I understand your question, you're asking me like, what's my assessment when what factors make me want to buy it or not?
Well, even just as renovations, right? Let's just maybe talk about your last house that you're renovating. You got into it. Like, how do you even start? How do you find out what renos, like how to do those renos? Like, like was it YouTube or whatnot? Like, what are some tips that you can share with us?
Yeah, no, there's definitely been some YouTubing. I do come from a construction family. My dad has a construction company. He's retired now. But he started off when he was like 17, 18 years old. He's in his 80s now. So when he was 17, 18, he started construction. I was born into that. My granddad his dad was a contractor. My mom's dad was a millwright and he had a woodworking shop, carpentry as well. And I was the only grandchild on both sides of the family for a long time until my sister came on. So I had full reign of the tools, got into it, hit everything and did all that. My dad would take me on the construction sites. So I'm very familiar with that. I'm very comfortable in that environment, but I was told you're going to university and that's all there is to it. So I was young. I did what my mom told me and that was that. And it just, I don't know, just like I said, laminate flooring, doing some painting and getting comfortable with that and getting good with that. And it just kind of snowballed, like the experiences and everything like that. A lot of YouTubing, of course, reaching out to my dad, there's a lot of phone calls there and going, what should I do? How should I handle this? The code, the bylaws and, and everything like that. So
very cool.
So learning it as you go.
Nice. So let's just talk about like one of your recent ones as an example. Can you walk us through how long that process took, and maybe some of the numbers? I mean, obviously you're saving a ton of money doing it yourself, but maybe just the cost of the last reno, and also like the length of time, if you can share that.
Mm-hmm. If I didn't do the renos, it would be cost prohibitive for me to do this, I think, or I would have to stick to the kind of renos that I started 5-6 years ago, where I had a budget of 10,000, and I've given myself a budget between 20 and 30 now. When I do a house, I've never gone to 30K, but the most I've ever done is 25K. And so when I walk into a house, I quickly, when I'm with my agent, and if I'm going to buy it or not, I quickly assess. I have to hire someone to do this. I have to hire someone to do this. I have to hire someone to do this. And so if that adds up and it exceeds my budget, then I walk away from it. So when I walk in, I have to see a lot of things that I personally can do. And that's what keeps my budget down here. And I live in the flips. Everything's a tax write-off too. So like the utilities, the holding costs, everything is a tax write-off. So
Very cool. So I'm guessing things like electrical and plumbing, like you probably hire out. Is there anything else that you?
Oh my gosh, yeah. No, electrical and plumbing is definitely not something I take on. The only thing I will do electrical is I will put in a new light fixture, and everything else be due to my insurance policy as well, because it's commercial. If God forbid, if anything ever happened, that's going to be the first thing. Well, who did that work? Oh, you didn't have a licensed person do that. Also, when I bring in an electrician, the scale of work, electric that needs to be done electrical is just way beyond my skill set, and I don't want to learn it, because the whole house, like the last house that I had, it had knob and tool throughout the whole thing. None of the ceilings had light fixtures, so that all had to be replaced, wired in. There was no outlets in the bathroom, there was no dishwasher, so that's a big electrical job. That's a huge scale, and that's certainly not something I would ever want to tackle or learn on my own. And I draw permits for that, and I find that that helps with resale as well. Because buyers are very impressed when they hear that, oh, you drew permits, you didn't use some handyman, you know, or your brother's brother or something, you know. So it helps with resale, knowing that you did everything legit and on the up and up.
That's awesome. So are you getting these flips, like you're talking about resale? Are you selling them? Are you keeping them and refinancing them? Like, what's the exit strategy on each one to recoup your money, essentially, in the equity you built in?
Well, the flips, yeah, they're resold. I don't stay in it. The longest I've ever stayed in one flip is probably 8 months. And that was because the person buying it had to sell her house. And I really wanted her to have the house. So I stopped any showings, and I was willing to stay there so that it worked out so that she could get into that house. So that's the longest I've ever stayed. The shortest is probably my current one. I had a reno timeline of 8 weeks. The hiccup with that one came, my windows throughout the whole house are being replaced. And I put that order in 2 weeks before I closed on the house, because I knew it was going to take a long time to get them. They came in last week, and my contractor went into a massive heart attack. So he was in ICU all last week. And so I'm waiting him to recuperate from all of that, and to just make alternate arrangements, either with someone in the industry that he knows. So I've given him an extension of like 3 weeks to just like get better. And he's home now, but he obviously needs some time. And I don't want to put any pressure on him. Okay. So I'm giving him 3 weeks. So that has put a little hiccup in my timeline, but that was unforeseeable, and that's, you need to work with that and roll with it. So, because I don't want to lose him. I've had him now for the past 1.5 years. So.
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is a people business as well. I mean, you know, having friends as on your side, and, you know, not people that hate you because you are, you know, at the end of the day, it's a small industry, and you've got to treat the good ones, the good contractors, and the good team members extremely well. So like, for example, this, you know, or just one of the recent properties, like, can you share what you're buying it for? And I know you're saying it's between, you know, $20,000 and $30,000 or less that you're putting into it, but can you share like the purchase price and the selling price with us, just as like an example of one of them, so that the listeners can get an idea of like some of the stuff that they could maybe do themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. This one is a one floor. It's the first time I've ever purchased a property that has a crawl space. So there's no basement, there's one bathroom, there's 3 bedrooms in there. That was a selling feature for me. I purchased that for $180,000. I'm putting a reno budget of $20,000 in it. The whole house has been gutted. It's been rewired. All the plumbing has been replaced. The exterior doors have been replaced. I put a brand new roof on the back, because it had 9 layers of shingles on it, which is definitely not code. It's definitely not code. So that had to go. And I'm a stickler for code. I try to stay like, you know, what's code? What's code? Is this code? Is this code? Like, I try to make sure that I do things properly. When my tradespeople are in, I will ask them questions. So yeah, $20,000, and the comps for that house, similar with a crawl space that has been updated and things like that. No garage, 1 bathroom. They're selling between $280,000 and $300,000.
All right, awesome. And that project took you roughly how many weeks or how many months?
I'm 8 weeks into it, and it was supposed to be up for sale, but like I said, there's
Yeah.
a bit of a push for it because of the hiccup with
But
my with Frank.
technically 8 weeks regardless, right? Give or take. It would have taken 8 weeks.
Yeah, when I walked in, I was like, I can get this done in 8 weeks. And that was simply because I didn't have an upper floor to deal with. I didn't have a basement to deal with. So I thought I got one floor to deal with. The outside didn't need anything except new stairs, new railings, things like that. So I just thought, based on my experience, this is how I estimated it. And I've come in on point on that. So yeah. But Frank is at home recuperating. So.
Well, let's hope that Frank is good and healthy soon. So you're living in this one, or are you living somewhere else right now?
No, this is in Windsor. So, and my home base is here in Waterloo. This is where I am right now. I come home on the weekends, which is another point for like another question. Like I really had to learn how to put balance into my life to keep my sanity, because I would work, never come home on the weekends, never rest, just, sometimes you just got to come home, do the hair and makeup. So, yeah. So no, I'm home in Waterloo right now. Yep.
Okay. So you try to go back for the weekends, and then you go to
every second weekend.
Oh, okay. Okay. So everything, all your stuff, because I was going to say, like, do you bring your stuff to each house?
No, just a suitcase. So the first order of business, when I go into a flip, when I have the keys, I got one bedroom, and I take everything out. I paint it. I put up a new light fixture, and I'll have that literally all done. I'll spend like 2 days. I'll have one bedroom, boom, set and ready to done. Then I seal it off. I'll put a mattress in there. I've got a little dresser that I bought at Restore for like $10. I'll keep my, and I have my tub of clean clothes, my tub of dirty clothes, work clothes. I've got my tub of towels and face cloths. And then I seal off the door so that now when I'm knocking down plaster walls, nothing can get into my bedroom and in my, mattress and stuff like that. So that's the first order of business.
That's smart. That's good.
To have a clean place to sleep on the floor. I'm going back to my university days.
Yeah,
sleeping on the floor.
It's funny. I know some investors that are very hands-on as well, and like sometimes they'll buy like a trailer, and then they just live in their trailer that's next to the house.
Mm-hmm.
Go and do, which is also a pretty good idea. But you've got a great idea with sealing off one whole bedroom, making one clean area, and then the rest, the rest you work on afterwards. Very cool. So obviously, you are surrounded, I'm guessing, with lots of great people, great team members, expert team members. Like, who are some people on your team that, if somebody wants to become hands-on and do a flip strategy, or, be hands-on with the renos, like, who are some of the team members they should have on their team, and where can they find them?
For me, my team, the way I'm looking at it now and how I've built it and what I contribute some of my success to, is my realtor, Steve Kanjar, down in Fonthill. He has been so resourceful and supportive over the years when I have my meltdowns and my questions, and his support has even continued, even though I'm down in Windsor and dealing with a different agent now. So I have my agent, I have my contractors. If I have a question, I will text Frank, I will text Neil, I go, I have a question about this, and they will give me feedback or give me a referral, things like that, so that I can continue on with the renos that I can do and keep moving forward. I have a phenomenal insurance person that keeps me on track with all of that, an accountant, and of course, I don't know, my personal life, my partner, my fiance, Tim. I would go crazy without him. He's definitely been very instrumental with all of this, and it's not his job. He has nothing to do with anything that I do. He's a graphic marketing specialist person, so he has nothing, but he's my muscle. That's what I call him. He's my muscle. So he'll come down to Windsor for a weekend, a day or two, and help me move things. Yeah.
Awesome. So the heavy things you get Tim to help you out on.
Yes, like last weekend, he came down because I was at that point in the renovation. I was like, okay, I can start bringing in furniture now from my storage locker. Well, those things are heavy, so I need a hand with that. And, so he comes down and gave me a hand with that, which I greatly appreciate.
Very cool. There's not a whole lot of women in the industry that do what you do. And, so I want to say congratulations, because you're really, stepping outside of I think the square box that a lot of people think, is sometimes a man's world of doing the renos and living in them. Have you ever, so how has it been for you just being a woman, in the industry, but also doing what you're doing, being very, very hands-on with the renos and essentially living in many of them for days at a time?
I think I have such a familiarity and comfortableness on that site because my dad took me on the construction sites before I could even walk. I have pictures of me when I was 2 years old, putting in installation at one of the houses. So I'm very comfortable around that. I'm very comfortable around being around tradespeople. I have a very thick skin. I know how to speak up if someone gives me an attitude or an unsolicited opinion about gives me an impression that I should be at home, with an apron on and cooking. So I have no problem, responding to that accordingly.
That's good. Well, I guess once you've got your team in place anyways, they respect you, they trust you. And then, you've got I'm sure your contractor, your electricians, your plumbers, your setup is
they put up with my personality. And that's a part of the reason why they've stuck with me. I had a different team when I was in Niagara, obviously. Yeah. But the past year and a half or so, I am the way I am. I'm very forceful. I am very time managed. I'm a stickler. I'm militant about that. So they know that. They know I'm serious. The first time I dealt with them, they were kind of like, yeah, okay, she's just going to give up. We'll never see her again, right? She's not doing this. But when they showed up for the second house, they realized, oh my God, she's telling the truth. She's really doing this. She's been doing this for a while. She knows what she's talking about. And so they've taken me more seriously, and their level of respect for me it's tangible. You could tell that they know what I'm talking about. So it's a good team.
So you've done a bunch of flips. You've got a bunch of properties that you're holding on to as well. Yep. What are some mistakes that you've made that you can share with the listeners so that they don't make the same mistakes?
Mistakes. Where do I start? When I looked at certain opportunities, I got scared. And I had that conversation with Steve, even just a little while ago. I'm like, you remember that building we looked at 5 years ago? And I was all gung-ho about it. I liked the numbers, and I was all but I got intimidated because it was a 5-plex. And I got so intimidated, and I just so regret that. I had to put on my big girl pants back then. I just wish that I had not gotten intimidated by going, I have to manage 5 tenants at once in one building, So that was a mistake. Because I would be sitting on a gold mine right now. This was in Niagara Falls. So I really regret that. So one takeaway I would like people to get, don't let lack of experience intimidate you from moving forward. Don't let fear hold you back. Sleep on it, but don't make that decision. Temporary feelings, don't just wash that away, sleep it off, and rethink that. And if the numbers work, move forward, and just realize that you have a support system with your agent, your family, or just whoever is around you. They will help you navigate through any troubles or problems that you don't have experience with. I wish I had done that. And then with the renos, probably I go in and I demo everything and I throw everything away, and then that just adds to the expense, because you're just like, well, wait a minute, I got to go out and rebuy that. Or if I made this reno decision, well, that just led into steps 2, 3, 4, and 5. I just created more work for myself. If I had just slowed down and rethought that decision, and instead of just going gangbusters and doing it, just take a minute and go, well, if I do that, is that going to create more work and more expense for me? Is this adding to my timeline? Is this adding another week on? And I have made those mistakes at the beginning. So at the beginning, it added a lot of time and expense that if I had just stopped and thought, given that extra minute of thought to it and thought it through a little bit better.
Awesome. That's great advice. So what's next for you? Obviously, throughout the pandemic, it sounds like you've been plugging away and working away, which is good. But, looking forward into 2021 and onwards, what are some of your goals?
I closed on my last flip March 12th. And obviously a week later, it was a whole new world. I woke up to a whole new world. And so I came back to Waterloo. I hunkered down, did the quarantine for the first 2 months, and I've never taken a summer off. So I was like, well, I might as well take the summer off, right? And then I started looking for my next flip in Windsor. And during those like 5 or 6 months that I gave myself, I did a lot of rethinking about what I wanted, where I wanted to go with this, because I had so much time to be, on Instagram, finding how people were doing things themselves. And I'm just like, well, maybe I should consider this. Maybe I should consider that. And how would I go about doing that if I wanted to do this, that? So that rethought my game. So that's the collateral beauty out of the whole COVID for me, was just it opened my real estate mind to different things. So with that being said, I'm not going back to my regrets about not buying that 5-plex 5 years ago in Niagara Falls. I'm thinking, well, you know what? I've been dealing with tenants now at 6 different places. I've seen it all. I've dealt with it all. I can do this. So definitely getting into multifamily, I feel like I've definitely got that experience and confidence in me to move forward with that. So a conversation that I had with my realtor, Ashley in Windsor, I told her about some of my tentative plans and how I wanted to build my portfolio in Windsor over the next year and a half. And that included buying some triplexes down there. So maybe 2 units. I told her I was interested in buying 2 units within the year down there, because renting down there is really, it's a good market for renting. Yeah. So.
Okay. All right. Very cool. So with the plan B, you moving into a unit at a time, renovating it, and moving into another unit, renovating, is that kind of the plan, or do you have another plan for the multi-units?
No. One of the things that I want to do is, if I don't move forward with the multifamilies down in Windsor, I'm going to go back to Niagara. I've had a tentative conversation about this with Steve also about doing that. If I don't stay in Windsor, I'm coming back to Niagara. So let's, I want to do this in the next year. So if a deal comes up, you think that I would be happy to have, and the numbers are, I will come and look at it and reconsider that. Would I live in the unit? No, I've never lived in an apartment building. I've never lived with anybody. I've never lived in a condo setting. It's not for me. So one of the things I want to get myself into is have a home base with a massive garage. I do need that setup so that I can have all my tools out there and go to the site and just have a home base and get out of living in the flips. So.
All right. Very cool. And I'm sure Tim would be happy to have you home more often as well.
Yes. It would be better for the relationship. Yeah. So some things need to be reconfigured to keep the whole picture and to keep all the bad life. Yeah. So
absolutely awesome. I mean, it's so interesting. It's so inspiring, Jacqueline, to see, another woman and you just being able to like go ahead and buy and go in there and renovate, get your hands dirty.
Well, you got to be a little batshit crazy too to take it on. Like I'm telling you got to be a little batshit crazy. My roofer, who I've used 3 times now down in Windsor, he was just like, he goes, why do you keep doing this? And I'm like, I just looked over and I'm like, because I'm batshit crazy. I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to be a hygienist. I need to be my own boss. I need this creative outlet. I love going in and just transforming this house. And I just love the whole thing, and being independent, being in charge of my financial freedom. Because one of the things that crossed my mind when this whole COVID thing happened, and Tim and I were sitting here at home in quarantine for the first 2 months, and I'm like, we would not be sitting here in this financial comfort zone if I had stayed as a hygienist. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't have what I have. I wouldn't be doing what I wouldn't be in this financial boat if I had stayed working as a hygienist. So having all this income from my rentals, I was like, I can wait this out for 10 years. And that was such a peace of mind. And I just think everybody should do it. Even if you only buy one income property. Just do it. Yeah, just do it.
It is a huge safety net too. I mean, like at the end of the day, whether it's a pandemic or not a pandemic, there's going to be something else. Maybe you're going to get sick. Maybe your significant other is going to get sick, or your child, or some, a parent, and you're going to have to be taken away from, your time, for income, your job, right? That job role. So it is so important, regardless of a pandemic or not, just to have, other sources of income where you're not trading your time per se, for that income. And real estate is really, like you said, it's the best. I mean, obviously you're putting a little bit more time into it because you're doing the renos, but you're getting the cash flow, you're getting the equity lift, you're getting the mortgage pay down, and over time, as tenants turn over, you can reboost the cash flow and increase that. And, there's so many things that you can do, and you have, not complete control, but a lot of control, with creating that for yourself, that freedom. So you were able to, like you said, you take the summers off. I took my summers off and then I decided to retire. But, at the end of the day, life is not about working for, somebody else for 40 years just to retire at 65. So, whether it's what Jacqueline's doing or, something else, there's lots of options out there to be able to be in a better position, I think, moving forward, should the next thing happen, because at some point something else will happen, right?
Yeah, just having that peace of mind when COVID happened, and I'm sitting here and I don't have to worry about anything. Our principal home has no mortgage. We have no personal loans. The vehicles are paid off and things like that. That's all covered. So we don't have a big overhead, but it was just positive reinforcement. It was just, it set a fire underneath me. Like, I want to grow this even more, when I got onto Instagram and I saw other people, what they were building in their portfolios. And I'm like, what, I should just keep on doing this and grow and see where this goes and what happens because who knows, there might be an even worse world pandemic 10 years from now, like, I don't know.
Yeah,
but
this is the time.
My tenants were awesome. When this started back in March, I was hearing whispers of this, and I reached out to Steve and I said, my realtor down there, and I said, have you been hearing this about, renters are going to go on strike or something? Like, what is this? Is there any credibility to this? And if it does happen, how are you going to handle and deal with it? And so he directed me to a Facebook group on Facebook. You had to get invited to it, and it was for landlords.
Is that on Ontario Landlords Watch?
Yes.
Yeah,
and so everybody was talking about this, and how they were dealing with it and what their reactions were going to be. So that was very resourceful. So my approach was 2 weeks before April 1st, I reached out to all of my tenants and said, like, what is your situation? Do you need an extension? Like, I don't want anyone to feel like they don't have money for food and medical expenses. Don't want you to be short on gas if you're able to maintain your job and things like this. So I reached out with them. No one needed an extension. Everyone paid their rent on time. I was like, oh my God, I've got a horseshoe up my hoo-hoo, like, I had no issues. Everyone paid rent. I did lose one tenant, but they gave me, they were very clear. We just can't keep up with this, because they were with me for 4 years, actually. Great tenants. I was sorry to see them leave. This was up in Fonthill, actually. And they were with me for 4 years, but his EI was running out, and just, everything like that. And she was carrying it on herself. So they came up with a financial plan that worked for them. So they were moving in with family members for a year to ride this out and keep their financial situation and not keep racking up the credit card, which I think was very wise for them, because they have 3 young children.
Yeah. And you're really lucky too, because they could have decided to stay, and, you taking them to court and going through the process could have been 12 months where.
Yeah. Well, she was very clear. She's like, we don't want to get into a position where 1 month we're like, Jacqueline, we just can't pay rent.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I would have worked something out with you. I would have worked something. I would have worked with you, but they were like, no, we're going to move in with family for 1 year. They moved in with her mom, actually, and they're just going to handle. And I think that's very financially responsible of them to take that approach. And they didn't want to put themselves in so I felt bad, because they were paying $1,500 a month but rent has really increased in 4 years in Fonthill. So I felt bad. So I literally went from $1,500 a month to $1,900 a month.
But and that's business, right? I mean, that just happens with places like Ontario that are rent controlled and have such low vacancies because of all that control. As soon as a tenant turns over, market rents go up 5-10% versus the measly 0% in 2021, but the measly 1 or 2% that you can increase, based on rent control. So unfortunately, it's always, I shouldn't say always, it's often a good thing for tenants to turn over. And 4 years is a great timeline where, you've had them for a while, it's been stabilized, but there is that lift. And this is where the cash flow boost comes in too, right? I
felt bad though, because under the circumstances, because so many people were not in a good place. And here I am, I'm basically getting a 400 increase in salary. And I felt bad and I felt guilty. I had that conversation with Tim and a few people. I was like, I feel kind of bad, I'm earning more money in this situation with this COVID, not losing. So I felt bad.
Right, at the end of the day, it's business. You treated them well. They were great tenants. You were a great landlord, and the market dictates the price. And you've given a great, you've upkept the house. It looks great. Somebody's happy to pay $1,900. So I would look at it as, it's part of the business. They go somewhere else, it's probably going to be 19 or 20 or 2,000 anyways. So they're paying market rent, and you've got a great place, and they have a great landlord too.
Actually, 1,900 in Fonthill is under market.
Well,
it's still under market. It's still under market. It's crazy. It's crazy. And this particular house is in a neighborhood. This house is in a subdivision. It's a newer one. It's about 20 years old. I've had it now for a long time. But the new builds up and around, there's nothing selling less for than $1 million. So I'm sitting on a gold mine. You
are.
On that one property, I am literally sitting on a gold mine. I bought it for $160,000. And if I wanted to, I could, I asked Steve 3 months ago, if I put this up for sale, what could I list it for? Like just as is, I don't go in, I don't renovate it, I don't put a new kitchen in or anything, because right now it's all basic builder grade, and I didn't do anything to it except paint over the years. And he's like $550. So I'm like, oh.
I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we're going to get into the lightning round, because we've been.
I hope I've got answers
for a while. But obviously you're doing this. You're not working at the dental hygienist job anymore. How do you get financing for acquiring these properties?
I'm going to be honest. I don't have to. I buy my flips in cash.
Okay.
That beats out a lot of the competition. Because one of the reasons why I went from Niagara Falls or St. Catharines area, when I started out, I'm like 1, maybe 2 offers in on a house. And I started getting priced out after doing this for 3 or 4 years down in that area. And I went from 1 or 2 offers on this house, and now I'm up against 30 or 35 offers. Well, I can't compete with that. If I wanted to beat this offer, I would have to hold on to it, but I want to flip it, so the numbers just didn't work. So I literally went on realtor.ca and Googled 200,000 Ontario. Where could I buy a house for less than 200,000 here in Ontario? Kappas Casing came up a lot. That ain't going to happen. Windsor came up, and I don't know anybody in Windsor. I've never been to Windsor except maybe drive through to cross the border 20 years ago. But I did what I had to do, and I went down and I bought a beautiful home in Walkerville. I don't know if you're familiar with that area in Windsor, but a beautiful area. And 6 months later, I sold it for $265,000, and I only put $15,000 into it. And so you got to do what you got to do sometimes. So
yeah. So you're just recycling that money essentially into the next deal and buying that cash from, the proceeds from the.
Yeah. So for the flips, I do buy them in cash, but my rentals, I have CIBC banking. So I just tell them I get a mortgage, but yeah, so I've never had to, I found that very interesting too, like the past couple of months, seeing people, how they have to finance this and this and that. And I'm just like, I haven't had to do that. So I feel really bad about that, but yeah, I do feel bad. And if I do need financing, I don't have any problems getting anything secured if I walk into CIBC. I've been dealing with them since my first mortgage, which was in my early 20s, in my university days. So I've had the same bank, basically the same people that I've tended with. I have a very long standing relationship with them. They know who I am. They know, they're familiar. And I just have credibility with them as well. Like they know I'm sincere, and
cool.
So,
it sounds good. And don't feel bad. You've unlocked stuff that works for you. Own it and enjoy it.
But I've had people like say, well, why don't you deal? I've had some people DM me and say, why don't you deal with a mortgage lender or this or that? And I'm like, well, because I don't have to. I walk into my bank and I always get 1% less than prime for anything that I need or want. So why would I fix what's not broken?
I mean, whatever works for you, like in my situation, it was a little bit different because, I worked with a mortgage broker because when I was going straight to the bank, I wasn't able to, I guess, get everything.
So you were on the inside.
I guess you must have some insider information, but I will say that the mortgage broker helped me so much. So I'm thankful of that. But again, like everyone's situation is a little bit different, and it's cool that you've been able to figure it out and make it work. And congratulations. That's just really inspiring.
But that might change with my goals of wanting to get multifamily. Yeah. The bank may not look at that. I haven't approached them about that yet. So I don't know if going into commercial or anything like that or multifamily, I don't know if that will change and they'll be like, no, we don't want to do that with you right now, or just, I don't know. So I may have to open my mind to different creative strategies, which I'm, investor Mel and Dave, they might be good for that. They might be a good source for that.
Awesome. Absolutely. All right, cool. So the next part of the podcast is our lightning round. So I'm going to ask you 5 questions, and within 10 seconds, you're going to give me the first answer that comes to mind. Are you ready?
Sure.
All right. So question number 1, what is your favorite real estate investing book?
I don't know if I have a favorite, but because I haven't really read anything like that. I've only read a couple of books, and anything that's real estate related, in the past couple of months, again, like the past 6 years, I haven't touched any of this. Is probably the only woman in the room. That's probably the only, and then all the rest are like tax tips and things like that, like tax tips for the Canadian real estate or investor, like those type of books. But just so that I'm on my game with my accountant, and he's can't keep me in the dark.
Awesome. Yeah, I think Don Campbell wrote a Canadian tax book for real estate. Awesome. Number 2, and I know you said that you just started listening to podcasts, but do you have a favorite podcast? It doesn't have to be real estate specific, but any one in particular you can recommend?
Well, of course, you. And I have found a few that are Canadian, and I mean, there's some good ones on the other side of the border, but then their information is not, how relative is it to me? Like that information is probably not very transferable to my situation being Canadian. I have found a few that are very, they seem really great content, like yourself, Investor Mel and Dave. If I ever had to look into creative financing strategies, I think they would be a great resource for that. There was another one that I found just the other day. Oh my gosh, I can't remember the name. I think I wrote it down. Erwin Zetto, he's Canadian. And then there was another one. I think she's going to be a great resource for me too. She's a multifamily Amanda. She's out west, I believe. Multifamily Amanda. And she seems to talk a lot about multifamily. So if I ever get into that, I think she's going to be a great resource for that. So I'm really glad I'm finding all of this before I even venture into this, and arm myself with a lot of strategies. So.
Awesome. All right. Question number 3. What do you do for fun when you're not doing anything related to real estate?
I binge watch on Netflix or something. I don't have a TV. I grew up without a TV. My university years there was no TV anywhere. Tim will download, he'll put it on a memory stick for me, and I'll watch it on my computer, like down in Windsor or wherever I am, and I'll binge watch. Like if there's a day where I'm just like, nope, don't want to move, I'll just sit down and I'll watch like 3 or 4 episodes of, Mandalorian or something, and then get back at it. So.
All right. Very cool.
Not very exciting, I know.
No, that's all. It's all good. I mean, you got to make up for the TV, like maybe the lack of TV that you've done, of TV watching that you've done in the past. But
Yeah.
awesome. All right, next question, number 4. If you lost all of your assets and your real estate tomorrow, how would you start again?
Well, I would definitely get back up on that fucking horse and I would start rebuilding everything. That's for sure. That there's no going back to being a hygienist or working for someone else. My mindset, I think, would be, well, I did it once, I can do it again. So how would I start? Probably, and this is going with like no savings in my accounts or anything like that. Like my bank account is 0.
Yeah.
Okay, I would go back to maybe waitressing or bartending and get 2 or 3 shifts like that and build up those tips and, just start all over again and get that savings, get that down payment and maybe go to something like Chatham and buy something for $80,000 and start building it all up again. But I would not give up. I would just go right back to the drawing board. Buy something for $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 and just build it up.
Awesome. All right. And last question, if somebody has $50,000 and they want to get started, how would you recommend they spend that money?
$50,000. Wow. I started out with so little. I little communities like Windsor, Sarnia, Chatham, and start buying real estate in those, like where you could probably buy 2 or 3 rental properties, and just build your portfolio up with that. I don't know. I just know that there's a lot of Chatham and Sarnia, Nova Chemicals down in Sarnia. They started building a huge expansion several years ago where they brought literally in 2,000 tradespeople to come in and start these expansion years ago. So if you wanted to buy a short-term rentals or anything like that, Sarnia was the place to go. Go buy 10 rentals. And all these guys live in the same house, 6 guys, they're from out of town. They don't want anything razzy-dazzy. They're just happy to have a place to, throw their boots down, after a 12-hour shift. So I look at developments like that too. Same thing with Chatham, they got a license for a casino years ago. So once that casino goes up, workers are going to come in, management's going to come in. They're not going to want to drive from London every day or wherever, so it's a good place to look for rentals and, look at what's going on in these little towns. Like, what are they building? What's going on? So, yeah.
Absolutely. Those are some key fundamentals for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Jacqueline, where can people reach out and find out more about you?
I only have one, Baywop Design. So on Instagram.
Can you spell that?
BAYWOP Design.
Awesome. Any final last words of advice?
Final advice. Do your due diligence if you can't do the renovations yourself. Find out if you have to hire people to do the work. Take the time to do diligence. So, for example, if you're looking for a general contractor, interview or have 3 or 4 different contractors come in. Don't just hire the first person who shows up. Be willing to, even if you don't have a skill set, be willing to do some of the work yourself to put sweat equity into it and if you're starting out. And if you don't let that intimidate you, don't let that intimidate you or stop you like what it did with me with that 5-plex years ago. Reach out to people and ask people and get that confidence so that you don't let fear stop you from making that purchase, which could be just phenomenal for your life. Don't let fear stop you. Reach out to people.
Awesome. That's exactly, don't let fear stop you. A great insight or piece of advice for the listeners. Thank you so much, Jacqueline, for being on the show. It was a pleasure having you on.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to Where Should I Invest with your host, Sarah Larby. Make sure to listen in next time. We'll catch you on the next episode of Where Should I Invest?